welcome back to We Students. Today we're here with our English teacher, Miss Jelena, and we're going to talk about IB English.
So, can you please start by introducing yourself and what led you to pursue becoming an IB teacher and later on examiner?
All right, so my name is Jelena, Nikodinoska, Chapovska, and I have been at Nova for 10 years now. And I've been an IB English A language teacher for the past 6 years. And as of 2 years ago, I'm also a published writer. Becoming an IB teacher wasn't my decision, so I was thrown into the fire.
Speak your truth, I guess.
Which means that I was just told that I'm gonna be teaching IB English A, but I was up to the challenge. I took the course, the training for becoming an IB English A language teacher, and I fell in love with the subject. So it's something that I really cherish and I want to continue doing.
And as for the IB examiner, did the school
Right,
also?
no. So for the IB examiner, that's not something that is mandatory. So it's up to the teacher whether they want to apply to become an IB examiner. So there is one requirement that a teacher needs to meet. That is to say, they have to at least have a 1 year of teaching experience before they apply, and they need 2 reference letters. I asked Ms. Gregorova, our principal, and our then IB coordinator, Ms. Tarova. That's the easiest part though. When you apply, there is like a training session when you pretty much familiarize yourself with the different text types, with the criteria, with the expectations as an examiner. And I would say that the most difficult part is when you do the qualification process. What does that mean is you grade 10 papers that have been previously graded by a senior examiner. So they want to see whether your grading is in line with the IB expectations. So if you pass this qualification cycle, you become part of that grading session. But nothing is set in stone. It means that once you qualify for an IB examiner for a specific assessment component, you can easily get kicked out of the session. What does that mean? So as you grade, there are seeds, and seeds are graded papers. So not all of the papers that you receive from IB have been previously graded by a senior examiner, but some of them have. Now, there is no pattern, so it's pretty much you need to be on guard. So as you grade, there will be like a pop-up notification that tells you, okay, you mark within tolerance, which means that you are either your grade matches that of the IB senior examiner, or it's 1 or 2 points above or below. But if you grade out of tolerance, then you get locked out of the system, which means that you cannot proceed with grading. And in that case, you need to wait until the senior IB examiner contacts you and they tell you to revise the criteria, and then they'll let you in. But if you do this for 3 times, that is to say, if you get locked out of the system for 3 times, then you get kicked out of that grading session, which means that you no longer get to grade any exam. So it is stressful. It is a very rewarding experience. You do get the insights into what the expectations are so that you can prepare your students better. But then you really need to remain on guard as you grade and make sure that your grading is consistent. Because, and this is different for each assessment component. Thus far, I've graded individual oral and paper 2. For individual oral, you get around, if I'm not mistaken, like 90 samples from all around the world. And for paper 2, you get 180 paper 2 samples. So after a while, it becomes exhausting and even like tedious. So you need to take breaks in order to make sure that your grading is in line with the IB grading criteria.
Have you ever been locked up?
I have.
For being lenient, or?
Sure.
What does that mean, Sarah? So for both, for being too harsh and for being lenient as well.
Also, you're on the third strike?
No, not yet.
No, because I've always imagined IB examiners like those old people who are like mean and like highlighting and
Right, so I'm the new face of IB examiners.
yeah. So for those who don't know, could you explain a little bit about what paper one is about?
Okay, so paper one is one of the three or two externally assessed components. It is an exam on two previously unseen stimulus texts. For at standard level, students need to write an essay in response to one of the stimulus texts, while HL students need to write two essays on both texts that they're given as part of this exam session. And for both HL and SL students, paper one accounts towards 35% of the grade. And this is a rhetorical analysis of non-literary texts, which is very important.
Okay, so many students struggle with the structure of their paper one responses. Do you have any strategy for what works best or what is maybe the easiest to follow that you would recommend as a
Okay.
teacher?
So structure-wise, maybe play it safe and have the conventional essay format, such as a clear introduction, body paragraphs, and a conclusion. It is equally important to have clearly defined or clearly formulated thesis statements and topic sentences. And which is most important is that these are reflective of the prompt, right? And this is what I oftentimes tell students that they shouldn't end up writing some generic template topic sentences, but rather they need to be very specific to the prompt. So let me give you an example of what I mean. And this is what I call the copy paste sentences that would work for any text type. So for instance, if you write something along the lines of I don't know the on the strength of imperative verbs, the text calls readers to action, right? So this is like an example of a copy paste sentence. It means that it's true, right? So by imperative sentences, you call people to action, but it's a sentence that I can easily like copy paste on any text type that uses imperative verbs, right? So if I am to reformulate this and make it specific to the text, let's say last class when you were absent.
Well, thank you.
We were reading, it was like a website on abolishing modern slavery. So let me just reformulate this example into a topic sentence that would be specific. So on the strength of imperative verbs, the text calls reader to action to abolish modern slavery and hence make them part of the problem of the solution to this problem. Right?
I remember for my paper one mock in September, you like when you were telling us what we can do better, you had like half of my paragraph selected and you said, "Oh, this can work for any advertisement." I was so sad.
Right, but did my comment make sense? Did you understand what I mean by that?
Yeah.
It's generic.
Awkward.
It's like this, like sweeping generalization, right? That you should avoid doing.
You
And
always
all-
write awkward, and I never understand what it means.
We always make fun of that, like not in a bad way, but like we say
Right. But
awkward.
remember, you said that you like sort of understood my comment once I gave you like a sample
Yeah.
response to grade,
I wrote
and
awkward.
you provided. Then you provided the same feedback, and you said
No,
to
but
me,
I
like,
don't
now I
understand it on
understand
my
you.
work.
Oh,
I understand
okay.
it on other people.
Right, because ours writing always makes sense to us.
So what would you say are the most common mistakes you see when grading paper ones, whether from students or like from when you're an examiner?
Okay, so I would say that this goes for paper two as well. Like first thing, like one of the main pitfalls would be describe, 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 or in paper two would we say like a plot summary. So students just become descriptive and narrative in their writing rather than analytical. It means that they just tell me what the text is about. and then don't move beyond that point. And this, of course, affects both criterion A and B when students are expected to demonstrate their understanding or interpretation of stylistic choices.
What advice would you give to students who are struggling with finding out kind of how to go from being very descriptive to analytical? Because I know that there's a lot of
I struggle with that a lot.
yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of
maybe
complaints
just
coming
like,
from friends.
so so make sure that you include stylistic devices, right? So first is that you identify stylistic device, and not just for the sake of it, but a stylistic device that is relevant to the question, right? To the prompt. Once you do that, you have your stylistic device, see how that specific stylistic device reflects the purpose, right? Because these are the what we call the like the triangle or the holy trinity of rhetorical analysis, where you identify the writer, identify the purpose, and you identify the target audience. So it's very important because students who tend to score higher, they are able to connect the dots. That is to say, to make this causal relationship between the writer's intent, their choice of stylistic features, and then the reader's response, right? So I think that as long as you understand that there is a connection between, okay, this is why they use this particular, I don't know, metaphor or simile or symbolism, and this is how it connects to the overall message of the text, you're good, right? But if you tell me that, okay, this is what they do, right? If you simply answer the what aspect, you can move beyond a five because that's like pure identification. It is important to be able to identify correctly and accurately, but then you need to move beyond that. And this is when your analytical skills come to the fore.
So moving on from paper one, can you give us a quick overview of what paper two is for those who don't know?
Okay, so paper two is also externally assessed. It is a comparative analysis on two literary works that you have covered over the course of IBDP. And it is very important to bear in mind that you cannot use texts that you have previously used for your HL essay or for your individual oral. It for at the standard level, it counts toward 35% of the grade, and for higher level students, 25% of the grade because they have an additional assessment component, which is the HL essay. So, and students have an hour and 45 minutes to complete this comparative essay.
So how would you suggest students plan how to write their paper two, especially under like time restrictions, time stress?
So this is during the exam condition.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that students should definitely do an outline because it will help with structure organization. And as you know by now, criterion C pretty much is on structure and coherence and focus on the prompt question. But I would say that students shouldn't spend more than, let's say, 5 to 7 minutes on their outline because they should definitely save more of their time on drafting the essay. So outline comes first. Now, I would, as students, drawing on my experience, the way in which they prepare for this exam, they pre-write an essay. And sometimes it can be helpful, and I'm fine with that. It can be helpful because I guess, it's easier to simply replicate something that you have previously written at home. It can save time, but it can be tricky because I have students who simply copy pasted their pre-written essay regardless of the prompt, and they just selected the prompt out of the 4 questions for the sake of it, and they simply provided me with an answer that doesn't really reflect in any way the prompt. All right, so don't do it because you would definitely lose points under criterion A and criterion B. All right. However, one way in which you can work with some pre-written version of a paper to response is that you sort of tweak your points a little bit so that you make them fit the prompt that you select out of the 4 questions. And that can work, right? But I think it's very important that you are self-critical and you are realistic as to what extent does my pre-written essay make sense in regard to this particular question that I have selected. For some students, this can be limiting and it can throw them off, right? It can confuse them. They can have writer's block. So it's up to you to determine what works best. If you have already done a mock exam, a paper 2 mock, right? You worked with a pre-written version of a paper 2 response, and you've realized that you are capable of tweaking slightly response, then you're fine. But if it's something that made you lose points, then don't do it, right? In that case, I would say that it's better to just go with a list of notes on 2 or 3 works, and then try and put this into an essay format on
That's
the
what we did.
actual exam.
No, but for us, we tried, like, we picked 2 books that, like, we knew best. We wrote down the elements, everything. And then when I went on the actual exam, everything that I learned just messed me up. Because, like, I had learned them for specific, like, we had tweaked them before with the prompts that you told us. And then I just mixed everything together and I didn't know what I was writing on paper 2, which
I don't know. For me, it was the opposite. Like on both of the paper 2s that we've had this year, the actual mock and then the summative, I used the exact same 3 elements, if you could tell. And then I just used your comments from the first one, the summative, and I kind of added that, like, to
And remember, you did yours on router and design and
the
SB2.
yeah. And then you had like comments about what other examples I can give for certain elements, and then I added that into my mock, and that really helped me because I basically just rewrote an essay that I've already written, and I know that will score high.
That's good.
Well, she's smarter than me.
Yeah, so maybe like one way of preparing for paper 2 is like drafting an essay beforehand, and then the other way is like what we're doing in class, like a Venn diagram of 2
We're
words.
doing that in class.
Well, maybe not as a Venn diagram, but when we are placing like works side by side, and then we see how they approach concepts or themes similarly or differently.
So for paper 2 specifically, what are some common mistakes you see students doing?
So apart from plot summary, which I have already mentioned, students should understand the nature of this particular assessment component, which is a compare and contrast essay, because oftentimes what I see is students write about the 2 works and their analysis is relevant to the prompt. However, they do it in such a way that they look at work 1 and then at work 2 independent of each other. So there is no compare and contrast component into their essay. And this is very important, right? Because here examiners want to see students' ability to put 2 texts into, let's say, a conversation, right? And see how they treat topics or themes differently or similarly. So one way in which you can signal that to your reader, to your examiner, or to your teacher is by using appropriate transition words, for instance, right? When you tell them, okay, this is a point of similarity, or this is a point of difference between the 2 texts.
Do we do that?
Yeah, you do. I think you do.
Yeah, I have a
Sometimes
separate
I do.
paragraph for them. That's how I always
I
remember
do.
to do them.
I usually, like, go with, for example, first element and I talk about the first one. Then I say how, like, the first one is different. No, the second one is different to the first one. And then I talk about this second one.
I just do like work 1, work 2, and then a short paragraph explaining how both of them are similar and different.
Well, how do you add the 3 elements? You have
Element 1, the 3 paragraphs. Element 2, 3 paragraphs. Element 3, 3 paragraphs.
although I can't write that much in so little time.
So, from an examiner's perspective, have you noticed that there's one thing that all high scoring students tend to do or have in common?
I'm so glad we did this episode right before exams.
Right. Oh, okay. So I guess, I mean, if I'm to break down the grading criteria, maybe for, let's say, for language, which is the final one, which is D, but I'll start in reverse chronological order. It's not chronological. So for language, it's important that students first and foremost use terminology that is specific to their analysis. That is to say, they are able to clearly state stylistic features. They demonstrate their knowledge on the terminology that is um, useful for this type of analysis. Then I would say to vary their sentence structure and their vocabulary. What does that mean? That you do not start each of your body paragraphs with the same template sentence, right? Template sentences are good. However, even in that case, you should layer them. So you do not start each body paragraph with the sentence by virtue of. So, like, you can play,
I
right?
thought that was good.
It is good, but it doesn't mean that every single one of your body paragraph should start with that sentence. So you have on the strength of, by means of, through, right? So use this. You already know this. So the idea is that you don't become predictable in your writing. Um, then for criterion C, which is coherence and structure. Again, this is like a conventional um, aspect of academic writing, right? All of the parts should be there, like a proper introduction, body paragraphs, conclusion, what I said before, topic, sentences, statements. Most importantly is that your argument should flow. And how do you achieve this? Again, by means of transition words and phrases. Then criterion A and B says students on their knowledge, understanding, interpretation, and evaluation. And what does it mean is first and foremost, you need to know your works, right? This is important. And what do I mean by that? You know who wrote them, when, the titles, you spell them correctly. You learn how to spell the character's name correctly as well. Then you are able to provide references, examples that are relevant to the prompt. Um, there is no such a rule or requirement or expectations that students should memorize quotes, but it definitely helps in terms of like scoring higher. And then for criterion B, it would be like being able to again identify stylistic devices and
From an examiner's lens, what do you think are like small changes students can incorporate into their writing to immediately boost their grade?
I don't think that there is such a thing.
Oh no, I was planning to use this.
I don't know, maybe just like use a template for their structure. So doing a review sessions over the past 2 weeks from which you really I'm sorry. No,
Let's count how many times she says absent.
God, no hard feelings, but the teacher keeps reminding us that we haven't seen her in a while.
We've seen you just in the hallways, not in class.
Yeah, right. So should we proceed? I don't know.
Yes.
Well, for each text type that we've been reviewing over the past 2 weeks, I've been providing students with like template structures. Maybe this is not the most creative approach to writing, but for this type of writing, it works because it's not a creative writing. It's not a personal opinion essay. So as long as you, I guess, play by the rules, you played safe. Maybe also review the different text types that you have covered over the past 2 years and try to memorize at least 2 or 3 features that are specific to each text type, because there are stylistic devices that are one size fits all, right? Like symbolism or metaphors or similes, allegory. But then there are some certain features that are specific, let's say to advertisements, you have a copy. For a website, you have a navigation bar, right? So use these because these
We had forgotten about
Navigation
Oh.
bar. Sorry.
You have them in the file section
Management.
of
Oh, we have
in our
them?
class.
Oh.
So yes, when you go to our file tab in
So we don't even
our
have to go to class, and we have it.
exactly. So everything is there.
What about the template? Is it there?
Yes, it's there. You
I
have
will share it under
everything.
this video as
No
well.
excuses. Yeah, you should do that.
We'll share them.
There is like a template for how to structure our paper one analysis on advertisement.
So, do you have any techniques or exercises that have worked for you as an IB teacher that can help students refine their critical thinking and analysis skills over time when preparing for the IB exams?
Yes, definitely. So one
Thanks.
is peer review or sample reading and grading. And I think this helps in the way that it first makes students familiar with the grading rubric, and then it develop a sense of what separates a good to a very good response to an excellent response. So when you grade someone else's work, you don't simply um, read for the sake of it, but you become more critical in your approach of their writing. So you get to raise questions, you get to establish patterns of inconsistencies, right? And in this way, I think that students develop a better sense of how to approach their own writing. Um, so this is one way in which we sort of uh, practice in class by reading each other's words or just sample responses from online platforms. And then another activity that works for students, I guess, is taking notes on the board and annotating things on the board. Because for students, when they see teachers put things on the board, there's this instinctive reaction to start taking notes because they believe that what's on the board it's important and it's worth noting. Maybe. But also I think that it affects their like memory skills. So it's one thing when you hear the teacher like speak in a very abstract way,
true.
and then it's another thing when they like circle and annotate things on the board. So maybe it helps students memorize things, certain things more easily. And also I think that is important because in that way I model behavior for students, because it's not always obvious when I tell students, okay, you should annotate the text. Not everyone knows what annotation means, or they're like clueless, okay, what should I do with my annotations, right? So when I do that for them, they're able to like I set them in motion in a way. So they pick up the practice of annotation and why this is important, so that when you do that on a text, regardless of whether it's like a piece of literary text or a non-literary text, they're able to establish patterns and then maybe like accumulate their notes into meaningful units that later on will translate into paragraphs.
So, in your opinion, what's the most rewarding part of being an IB English teacher or examiner?
The poetry activity.
I knew she was gonna say this one.
Why?
Oh, I wrote the poems?
Yes.
That's
So
nice.
it's a poetry activity. It's a pastiche activity, right? When you write in style of someone else. This was Langston Hughes' theme for English B. I really liked it because this is an activity that I first started doing like 3 years ago, and there is rarely a student who doesn't complete this activity, which makes me realize
Except
that.
Kali.
Okay. But, okay. He didn't do it. Maybe he did it.
We were joking in
You were
class.
joking about it in class.
I know. But then, like, still, 21 out of 22, it's a good score for a formative assessment, right?
Yeah.
And just as a teacher, this like makes me realize that students just want to break from the paper to routine that sometimes becomes like tedious. And also, I guess students just need the this imaginative and creative space when they can get in touch with their emotions and their reflections about life.
We were all
Because-
crying in class.
I know. So it was very cathartic in that sense. I agree.
Definition, please. No, the purge of emotions.
Exactly. Bravo. It is, and at the same time, it was definitely an immersive experience. Like everyone was like all ears and wanted to hear what other had to say. Like regardless of whether a student decided to read their own poem or just like remain anonymous and have someone else read their poem for them. I think that it was like a very immersive and empathetic experience for everyone in the classroom. Like genuine. It was
empathetic. Yeah.
No,
I thought you said
pathetic.
No. So yeah, it was like an emotionally charged atmosphere, which was like beautiful and genuine and I guess emotionally rewarding for everyone in the classroom.
That's when I started liking you as a teacher.
Oh, okay. That was very late in the school year, so maybe I should introduce it at the beginning of the school year.
Why would you say?
No, it's just before that. It's not
Before
like
that, I was indifferent to you.
no. I really didn't know it because, for example, you were her TOK teacher, so she knew.
Wasn't she your TOK teacher this year?
Yeah, this year. Last
Oh,
year.
you didn't know.
She didn't know me from before.
I did.
That's what she's saying. That she only knew me from 1 year. Gotta not be a
That's
good
right.
friend.
She's
I
saying she
did
was
go
absent.
to like 3 this year TOK
Yes.
classes. No, I went for my 3 interactions and plus 2 more classes.
2 more.
Which I was supposed to have an interaction and then we ended up not doing it.
It's okay, no one knows
remember.
that
There
you're
were so
okay.
many of you this year. Just okay.
Another
Crush my
episode.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing anything on TOK. Not interested. Not going there.
So, are there any final words of encouragement for students that are about to take their English A exams this year?
You've got this.
That's
No,
it.
I know it's. I would say that, like, to impart some words of wisdom, and maybe this will sound like trite and cliche, but I truly mean this: to not let IB scores define you. I know that we need to be realistic because they do affect your maybe university offers and acceptance. Um, but at the same time, bear in mind that these offers depend on factors other than your IB scores. So, yes, IB scores do not define you and do not let them devalue you in any possible way. You're more than that.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Miss Jelena, for coming today.
Anytime.
And we'll see you next Sunday.